I'm here with Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Michael Bram, retired as of 12 o'clock this morning.
About 9.5 hours ago. Yeah.
How does it feel to be like one of us?
I like the outfits.
Yeah.
I'm not in the uniform anymore.
As soon as the moment struck midnight, did it all just come off and you said...
I was in bed, actually, so... I'm an old retired guy, so I'm not up at midnight that much anymore.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sure you've been to several retirement ceremonies. How was it like for you last night, having that experience and actually realizing you're there?
Yeah, as a chaplain, I've been to a lot because I was given the invocation. But being in the ceremony, being the retiree, it was what I wanted. It was lighthearted. It was a bit of a roast. It was sarcastic. It was fun. So that's who I've been for my whole career. So that's what I was going for. So.
Well,
So I got it.
which one of the speeches do you think was the strongest? Was it Joey going in hard with the Spark references, or?
Can I say mine? They were all different. My mentor officiated, and that was very special for me. The MC was an old friend of mine from when I was lieutenant at Minot, and he did a bunch of old jokes from my missile days. So everyone really hit the marks that I wanted them to hit.
Too good. One of the things that I found completely moving, and it really, I'm not the most emotional bloke, so it's funny to say it, but it did jottle me, is when you were speaking to your wife and you brought her the tennis bracelet, and then later on, then you bring the medals for your kids to show appreciation. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences and your reasons for specifically doing that and what that meant?
Well, I don't think anyone can be successful without their family. I was deployed when Moshe was born. So I tell the story. My third day on that deployment, I bought a PlayStation. The first month of deployment, Sarah had a kid. So who had it harder? Yes, I was in a combat zone. I was in Qatar. It's not, it's safe. She's in Alaska, so there's no Jewish support near us, and she had a kid. We had to fly in oil, everything. So who works harder? When I was in Afghanistan for Pesach one year, Sarah tells me that they had like 15 people were for Passover meal. I'm like, are you nuts? It's like, well, 10 of them were kids. I'm like, that doesn't make it any easier. Like, that's not,
Still got to feed them out.
Right. So the ceremony last night was not about me. It's about people who helped me get through my career, and no one helped me more than my wife and kids. So it was really for them more than for me.
That's beautiful. And that hug at the end also.
Yeah.
Even though only one came in at the beginning, but
right. I think I was a big hugger, and she just I got to hug Dad, and then they all came in. Yeah.
I think everyone was just looking like, we're not sure if we're allowed to. What's the protocol over here? Yeah. Let's indulge a little bit into the career.
Okay. How much time you got?
So starting from the beginning, and your reasoning from college. I'm going to get your degree wrong. So
astrophysics.
Astrophysics, exactly.
What all chaplains have, right?
Yeah, exactly. I got a degree in beers, so
I have a minor
accent.
right.
So having a degree in astrophysics, you could have the world was your oyster. Yet you decided to serve the nation, and serve the nation in one of the most difficult rooms that no one would quite understand, as I realized last night when you were referring to some of your missile buddies.
Yeah.
So can you first talk about why you made that decision to serve the nation at that point?
I wish I could say it was for all the high-minded motives. I wanted to be an astronaut. That's why I joined the Air Force. That's why I majored in astrophysics. My whole life I wanted to be an astronaut. So it's not the only path, but a lot of astronauts have gone through the military. So, I walked into the RTC building when I was a freshman in college and said, sign me up. So that's why I joined. I actually did not make it to the space program. That's okay. If NASA comes looking for a chaplain in space, I'm first in line. But that was the original plan. And the Air Force gave me a different job.
Well, that's actually, it's rather interesting, because usually people, tend to, like you said, have that high-minded idea, at least in their answer.
Right.
But you didn't go in there and then not become an astronaut and then leave. You stayed for the next 20 years. The reason
became more altruistic as I went on. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
So I was a nuclear missile launch officer, which is one of the most unpleasant officer jobs in the Air Force. You're stuck in this underground bunker for 24 hours at a time, and doing your job is the worst thing in the world, right? I always tell people there's only 3 kinds of days. There's days where you do nothing, and that's like the best option. Days where you make a mistake and get in trouble, and days where you kill 40 million people, right? So your job is the worst thing in the world. So it's a low morale job, and I was in North Dakota, in the middle of nowhere. At the time, there wasn't even a Chabad in the state. I was becoming more religious. I didn't grow up religious, but I'm becoming more religious. And that's a whole other story. But I was served as the Jewish lay leader at Minot Air Force Base, and that there's only at the moment now that I'm retired, there's only 7 active duty Jewish chaplains in the Air Force. So most bases don't have one. So the Jewish program is run by just a regular person. It doesn't have to be an officer. It can be anybody who has base access, who's willing to run the program. I did that for about 2.5 of my 3.5 years in Minot. And it became more important to me than my real job. And as I'm becoming religious, I had a lot of book knowledge, right? I'm sitting in these alert shifts, and I'm not doing anything, so I'm reading a lot. So I had a lot of book knowledge, but I didn't have any practical knowledge. The nearest kosher piece of meat was 5 hours away in a foreign country in Winnipeg, Canada. So I didn't know how to do anything. So I knew I had to leave the Air Force to go to yeshiva to go study, just to learn how to be Orthodox. But I liked being in the Air Force. Most of the time, almost every day. So someone said to me one day at a Friday night service, "Hey, Mike, you should go be a chaplain, be a rabbi." And I thought, that's kind of ridiculous. But I thought about it for a while, and I said, helping Jews practice their faith in the military is more important to me than the actual job. I can go to yeshiva, I can learn, I can come back, I can stay in the Air Force. So it kind of seemed like the natural merging of, and I also think chaplains that have had prior military experience I'm not saying they're better, but they relate more easily.
Yeah.
Because I've been with that airman and sitting. So it seemed like a natural flow from the path I was on. And so I left the Air Force after 4 years. I was in yeshiva in Muncie for about 5.5, and then I came right back in after I got smicha.
Were you officially, was that your service to go study, or did you have to exit the military and then rejoin?
I had to separate. So I'd done my 4 years of my ROTC commitment, and then I had to separate. There is the chaplain candidate program, which was funny. I tried getting released early from active duty to go to yeshiva. It was this weird catch-22, is they wouldn't release me until I was a chaplain candidate, but they wouldn't take me as a candidate until I was in yeshiva. So I'm like, all right, fine. So it was like a 4-month difference. It wasn't the end of the world.
I'm planning to become a citizen, so I know all about all of it.
Yeah, it's a big circular thing.
Yeah. Let's move back towards your military service and that experience with the nuclear button, and how that came to be, how you actually got positioned there, and then a bit about that experience.
How I got the job, when you're a senior in college in RTC, you fill out what they call a dream sheet, and it's everything you ever want to do in the Air Force. And the enlisted do it as well when they're signing up. And if you're enlisted, if you put down security forces, being an Air Force cop, anywhere in the list, you're going to get it. That is the job that if it's on there, it's a match. I didn't know this, but what they used to call space and missile was that job for officers. So I put down physics, engineering, and space and missiles. I'm like, okay, space program. And space and missiles used to be basically take Space Force, used to be part of the Air Force, right? And missiles. Yeah. So I'm like, I'll do a space job. It'll be fun. Well, while there's 4 space jobs, I think, and 1 missile job, 2/3 of the people go missiles. They have to be man those silos all the time. So I ended up at space and missile training, and there was a class of 21 of us, and I was 5th, and we got to pick our jobs. All the space jobs were already gone. By the time I
could come 5th out of 21.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
There were only 4 space jobs. All the rest of us, we all knew we're all going missiles. So I ended up as a missileer.
You kind of did the math at the training and worked it out.
Yeah.
What was that epiphany like when you realized that you probably weren't going to get what you wanted, but you're still committed to this service? I
think I kind of expected from when I was in RTC that if I'm going to space missiles, I'm probably going missiles. So I think I expected that all along, that I'm going to be a missileer. It's an unusual job. I try to. This is going to sound weird on me. I try to be positive about these things. So I'm like, okay. I remember having an Atari playing Missile Command and cheering for the missiles. Like, go missiles, So I started to be excited about it. Once I got to do it, I wasn't so excited about it anymore.
Well, can you give us a little insight into what it's like in that room? You spoke briefly about it, but more in depth.
Yeah, sure. So there's you and your crew partner, and it's 2 lieutenants, maybe lieutenant and a captain. One's a commander, one's a deputy. And every third day, you go into this underground launch bunker. I'd say we call it a capsule. It's shaped like a big Tylenol capsule, right? And there's like a box inside. And I'd say maybe 20 feet long and 8 feet wide, and you're trapped in there. It's 100 feet down ish,
Underground.
Underground. Yeah.
So no Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Well, at the time there wasn't. This is 1999, so
Right.
the Wi-Fi didn't exist. But yeah, no Wi-Fi.
Off the phone, I'm using the internet.
There is a phone. There is a TV. We all bring our PlayStations. You're not supposed to do that, so shh. But we all bring our PlayStations. I got really good at Madden football on a PlayStation. Really, really good at it. And so you're in this bunker, generally 24 hours at a time. And in that 24 hours, there's about 6 hours of busy work. Everything has to be checked every day, which is important. You gotta, inventory things, and there's exercises, right? So we send messages back and forth that are not real. So when things are real, the enemy doesn't know what's real, what's not, right? And then, things break every now and then. It's funny. So we're in a launch capsule, we call it, and you can see 50 missiles, not see them like on the screen, and you have primary control over 10. So, but those are unmanned, so people are. So, but there are all kinds of security sensors. So this big giant pole, it's basically a motion sensor. It's windy in North Dakota. So if the pole moves, it thinks the silo is moving, and so we get an alarm. So like every day, I don't know, like 3 or 4 of these things are happening, and you're sending the cops out. We all know what it is, or it's like a tumbleweed or a bird landed on the silo, whatever it is. So you send the cops out to go, and they have to sit there for an hour while I reset the system in Minot in January at 2 a.m. It's like 40 below. That's how it goes. So like I said, there's about 6 hours of busy work, and then a lot of downtime. Generally, one of you can sleep, so there's a lot of alone time. So usually you guys trade off sleep shifts, unless you're at higher states of readiness. Then you have to both be awake. But on average alert, you're usually awake, or you're usually up by yourself, or you're sleeping. So there's a lot of alone time. Now I'm a serious introvert, so I didn't mind that. Like I said, I got really good at PlayStation football. I did a lot of reading as I'm becoming religious. Every payday, I'm going to artscroll.com or Amazon, and I've read every word of the Stone Chumash. I've read every little footnote in the Art Scroll Rashis, all of it. And I had all kinds of time to read. And at 2 a.m, there's nothing on TV. So, I just did a whole bunch of reading. People get master's degrees because you have all kinds of time to study.
Right.
So, there's some benefits to it, but it's a boring life.
So why would the military put someone with the mind that you have in that position where essentially you're not doing much?
I don't think they're thinking about it. First, I'm not sure how the mind that I have, as you say, I have a head for math and science. If I'd majored in something seen as easier, I would have flunked out of college. So it's not that I'm extra smart. I just knew what I was good at. But I had a friend who was here last night. He majored in electrical engineering, and they made him a missileer. It's one of those jobs that you have to be fully manned, right? You can have fewer engineers in the Air Force, and the national defense is not hurt. But if you don't have someone manning those silos, that's a serious problem.
I guess what I'm asking is, why does someone with that expertise need to be in that position?
You don't. I mean, a trained monkey could do our job. It's checklists. It's just fine checklists. Now you have to know rules about what makes a message authentic and valid, and all those things, like Crimson Tide, and that that's real. So I'm not saying that like an actual monkey could do it, but it doesn't. I work with very fine missileers who had non-technical degrees, geography and English, and these are very, very fine officers, very good missileers who didn't have tech degrees. So it's not really required to have it.
So it's not about trying to understand how the missile, needing to know how the missile works and
no. Right. That's a maintenance cruiser for.
Yeah.
We're just launch officers. And once it's out of the silo, it's gone. We don't even talk to it. It's really deaf. Because if we could talk to it, so can the bad guy.
Then anyone else could.
Right. Yeah. So once it's out of the silo,
there's no turning it off.
It's gone.
It's Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. We love that movie. We love that movie so much.
I'm glad. We in year 12 there was an article, and the title of the article was how we learned to stop
worrying and love the bomb.
And love, yeah, but it was about whatever the topic was. So I wrote my entire language analysis just on the heading because I love the movie so much.
Oh, yeah.
Teacher hands back and says, "You have to read the article too."
It's a very popular movie among nuclear operators.
So, with all that downtime, with all that alone time, and what happens to the camaraderie?
Like I said last night, misery loves company. So it is a tight-knit bunch. Now, there's a lot of backstabbing, too, but I think that's just normal in the Air Force. But it is a tight-knit bunch. I mean, I had two friends who I was stationed with 25 years ago, and they both came last night. I think the fact that you've had the heavy burden on you, you don't really think about it every day, but it's there. And you end up working with the same people because you're all on the same 3-day shift. So either you're off with them or you're on with them. So you're with them all the time. Either you're with them in your leisure time or with them in your work time. Your actual crew partner, you're going to see him or her more than you see your spouse.
Oh.
You're going to spend more time with them. I was single at the time, but my partner was married, and he saw me more than his wife. And so hopefully you're friends.
Yeah.
I've had something I wasn't friendly with, and that was really, really unpleasant for both of us. But if somebody that you're friends with, you stay friends with them forever. And I don't know if that's unique just to that job. You know, there's a military camaraderie. If you've gone to war with somebody, if you've been wounded with somebody, or if you've been suffered with somebody, there's a bond there. I don't think that's unique to that job in the Air Force. I think that's relatively common in the military. Shared suffering.
Yeah. Unity through suffering.
Yeah. That
weight on your shoulder of knowing that at any moment, 40 million lives are essentially in your finger.
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah. What effect did that have on you? Are you able to talk about it now, or is it still something that you kind of suppress and try not to think about?
I think a little bit of both. I think they don't want us thinking about it. I can recall when I was in ROTC, before I got the job, I had to see an Air Force psychiatrist. And it's funny, it was about a half-hour meeting. He was much more concerned about claustrophobia. I remember being asked once about nuclear war, and 8 different ways about how many ways can you ask, are you claustrophobic? Because you're trapped in this room. Unless the room is on fire, you can't leave the room for any reason. Unless being in the room will kill you, you can't leave for any reason. So no, I'm not claustrophobic. But it wasn't really about, are you okay with this job? It was, are you claustrophobic? I do remember in training, there's a point in training where you get to your first key turn, we call it. That's when you actually launch in a simulator. Your first month of training, however long it is all routine day-to-day maintenance and comm and things, and then all of a sudden you switch into here's the actual launching procedures and stuff, and that's a big moment. And I remember after that we all had to meet with the squadron commander about it. I can remember having dreams after that, having nuclear war dreams after that. So that was a big moment for all of us. But after a while, it just becomes routine. And and like I said, I don't think they want us thinking about the actual ramifications of what our job is. It's an important job, but it's also a horrible, horrible consequence of doing it. And no one is excited about killing innocent civilians. With the precision-guided weapons, you can avoid that. With the nukes, I mean, there's no way to avoid it.
Nothing.
After that, I had a few dreams about nuclear war my first month maybe on the job, and then they just kind of stopped. You just get used to it. Now I have dreams about actual alert polling. So I actually filed a VA claim for, among other things, nightmares. Because I have dreams not about war, but about the actual job.
Right.
That's been going on for 20 years.
Wow. For 20 years you've been having those same...
They're less frequent now than they used to be, but
wow.
If the VA is watching, they're still there. Okay?
It's on the record. Wow. So, sorry, that took me offline a second. With that experience, sitting there all day, waiting, was there any points in your service where that waiting almost became a reality of having to?
So yeah, I was on duty on 9/11. So I was on the base. We were actually in the middle of a big exercise, top-down nuclear exercise. We came in early to get a briefing on what to expect that day. So usually our day starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is Central Time. So we said we came in at 7 a.m., which was 8 o'clock Eastern Time, right? So it happened like 8:45, right? Somewhere around. Right. So we're in a briefing. Okay,
so you just happened to be early.
No, we had to be early because of our exercise briefings.
Right.
So
that's what I mean. You happened to be early that day.
Yeah. So we here's how to respond to exercise and all the exercise briefings. We come out of the briefing and we heard what happened. None of us believed it. We said this is a good exercise input. This is a realistic way the war is going to start. So not one of us actually thought it was real. And then someone turned on a TV, and we're like, oh, that's not an exercise. That's a thing. Now it's on. And I keep a little logbook, mostly for my annual reports, everything I'd done. And recently I found it, and I'm like all the 15 pages of that morning. I'm like, So we went to the highest level of force protection conditions. We couldn't leave the base. We had a.
Feel free to give as much detail.
Yeah.
By the way. Don't.
I'll keep it unclassified, obviously.
Yeah.
One of our squadron commanders, he had just moved there from the Pentagon, and his office was destroyed. So he had moved there 2 months earlier, and he came in and talked to us and said every military career has a moment when your conflict begins, be it Pearl Harbor or the Gulf of Tonkin, whatever it is. He said this is yours, and he's absolutely right. So we were delayed going into the field because of security, and then when they finally let us go, you couldn't. And our missile field is 8,500 square miles. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing an Air Force cop. Everywhere you went, there was an Air Force cop. Everywhere. So we were going out of there's 15 launch capsules broken into 3 squadrons of 5, right? So each of the 5, one is in charge. And of those 3, one is in charge. That's what we were going to. Now, I was a deputy missileer, wasn't a crew commander. So we get to what we call India, A, B, C, D, right? So there's India. And they were, you could tell they were just frazzled. And we have always two sets of code books, the exercise and the actual. Exercise is opened every day. It's used all the time. I'd never even met someone who opened an actual. They were on page 10. They went to DEF CON. They did things that no one ever does. As I recall, we were one, from day-to-day normalcy to global thermonuclear war. There's a lot of steps in between, right? So they were one step away from putting the key in the switch, which hadn't happened since the 60s. So yeah, that was a whole thing. And I don't want to get too big on video, but things happen that don't ever happen. They were doing things, we were doing things. By the time that we changed over, we were moving missiles around. We were all of a sudden retargeting things, and moving missiles and things that don't happen day to day. And there's a point where okay, it's on. We're okay. I'm ready to launch today. Who we're going to launch on? Obviously, if you nuke Afghanistan, how does that hurt them? They're already in the Stone Age. So there's a lot of speculation. Anything I say is a guess. But we were really okay, now's the day. That died down about a day after that. But I can recall in a nuclear war, your chain of command gets really short. It goes from the president to the Pentagon to me. So I can recall back briefing our wing commander, right? So she was back on the base, and she's in charge, but she's out of the loop, right? Because I'm in the field.
They just need to get straight to you.
Right. So every hour we had a call with her. Hey, ma'am, you should know. Here's just what happened. On the secure phone, but it's weird as a lieutenant back briefing your boss's boss, your wing commander, on what's going on in the war. But that's how it works. Because in the way that the construct works is the Air Force or the Army, the Navy, or the Marine Corps, whatever, doesn't fight wars. The services train and equip people to fight, and then they go off to the combatant commands. They go off to CENTCOM or NORTHCOM or SOUTHCOM, whatever, and they fight the wars. So when you're actually in a launch capsule, you're an asset of STRATCOM, not an asset of the Air Force.
Can you just to people
U.S. Strategic Command. So
right.
That's the.
So all of those are different commands.
Yeah. So CENTCOM handles the Middle East, and SOUTHCOM handles the South, right?
Yeah.
So there's some that are regional and some that are worldwide. So STRATCOM is the one for all the nukes, be it bombers, subs, whatever. So when you're in the capsule, you're a STRATCOM asset. You're not an Air Force asset anymore. So that's why my chain of command flows through STRATCOM. But she's still an Air Force asset. But it's weird because it's not like I'm deployed for 6 months. I'm deployed for a day. So it's not like I'm gone. I'm deployed. So she's still in charge of these are her missiles, so to speak. So we had to back brief her on the status of the war. Our off-going crew, they wouldn't let them go home because of obscurity. Of course. And they terminated crew rest, so there's no sleeping. At DEF CON, there's no sleeping. We ended up doing 12 on 12 off. So we would swap crews. So then when we're on the surface, we could sleep. When we were castle, they could sleep. That lasted for 5 days. And ironically, I'm becoming religious. And this was Tuesday. Rosh Hashanah was like Monday.
Yeah.
Right? So I have leave. I have plans to go home to an Orthodox shul in my hometown in Milwaukee. I'm like, I have no idea how to make it or not. I have no idea. So they finally they let us go home because we were running out of food.
Wow.
So in the building on the surface, there's a chef, there's a kitchen, right? Because they make food for all of us. So like we'll have to restock then. So if we're sending a food truck, then we'll send a new crew. But I came to work on Tuesday morning, not expecting to work for 5 days. So I had one flight suit and one change of underwear. I had my toothbrush. Then there's a shower on the surface, but I'm not wearing clean clothes. And because of security, I left my PlayStation in my car. Well, after the first day, there was no new news. Nothing new happened, which is great. There was nothing on TV because it was all old news. We're just bored senseless. We're just bored senseless. Which, as a misleader, bored is good because I didn't do anything. For the last 4 days, we're just bored out of our minds. So then we get home, and it was Saturday.
So you had that adrenaline fly through you of the intensity of nuclear war.
Yeah.
And then a day later, you're just back to just complete.
That's a lot of the military, not just missiles, but 23 hours of boredom with a 1 hour of terror. That's the military. You're going to wait. Ah, there's the war, and then okay, wait. So yeah, I think that's not always unique to our job.
So what's that experience like when you go through that, especially with the extremity of 9/11 being the
Yeah, and that was terrifying. I had a really good commander who I mentioned last night. He taught me how to lead in a crisis, and I learned a lot from watching him just take charge. And he's giving orders. And what's funny, in the simulator that we have, he was awful, but in the real world, he was fantastic. So he didn't know checklists very well, but he knew how everything worked inside and out. So he could ignore checklists or just do the thing without using the checklist, which I wouldn't recommend, but it worked for him. And we were not new in the job. You had to be extra qualified to go to the command post. So we were experienced missileers. So obviously there was some terror, and like I said, there was a point where I'm like, oh, okay, today's the day. We're going to launch today, and that's terrifying, because not just because of what it means to the people on the other end, but we always expect if we're going to launch, it's because America is not a first strike nation.
Yeah.
If we're going to launch, it's because there's something on the way to us. So if you launch, you're just going to wait a half hour for death. That's it. So my life was never in any real danger. Like I wasn't a New York City firefighter, so I can't say I was ever in any real danger. But it was terrifying on a certain level for us because we think, okay, well, and we're going to launch, and the Russians are going to launch back at us because they're going to get freaked out, which I wouldn't blame them, right? Or China, or whoever. So it was a terrifying experience.
And you'd assume to some extent they probably know the region in which you guys are in, so they probably want to hit where the launch.
Right. But let's say this is all a guess. So yeah. It's not classified. Let's say for argument's
sake. This is probably how you were feeling on the day.
Right. So the first country that America attacked after 9/11 was Afghanistan. Right. So let's say for argument's sake that we nuke Afghanistan. An ICBM flies north over the pole. Well, if you're going to fly an ICBM to Afghanistan, you're going to fly over Russia and over China. And that's going to make them kind of nervous. So yeah, it's not headed to you, no problem. And, are they going to believe us?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. There's a lot of chaos. So the idea of us launching, it probably would have been like a sub or a bomber, which is much more flexible. Each of the three legs of the nuclear triad, the ICBMs, the bombers, and the subs. The ICBMs are the most reliable. The bombers are the most flexible, and the subs are the most survivable. So each has its own advantage. So we are less flexible because our launch point doesn't change. Right? The thing's buried in the ground. So if you're going to launch an ICBM, it's got to fly whatever it has to fly. A bomber can fly around Russia and go somewhere else. So I don't know that we were ever actually a question of us pushing that button, but I'm sure. Actually, and the President Bush, he was in Florida when it happened, right? And he went to the nearest Air Force base, which was in Louisiana, and then he flew to Omaha, Nebraska, which is where STRATCOM is headquartered. And if the president is going to fight a nuclear war, not from D.C., he's going to fight it from Omaha, Nebraska. And we're like, oh my gosh, like he's in Omaha. Well, now it's out, But there was so much uncertainty. But there's a lot of things that happened that day that made us think like, okay, today's the day. I actually knew a guy, Missileer, he carried a cigar in his flight suit. On the off chance he had to launch, he wanted to have a cigar as he's waiting for death. Okay, it's a weird batch of people.
Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. Missileers are a weird batch of people, and I don't know if it attracts weirdos. I was already weird, but or if it makes us weird. Probably a little bit of both. Because it's just a weird job.
Are you able to disclose whether or not you spoke directly to President Bush?
I did not. The orders from us come in the form of like coded messages, basically like a series of letters and numbers.
Right.
No Missileers I'm aware of spoke with President Bush. We are back briefing our wing commander, but actual launch orders and even DEFCON changes, all that kind of stuff comes in a coded message from either the Pentagon or from Stratcom. Now, the president will then give those orders.
You're 1 degree away from the president, but you're not actually having a conversation with him.
Correct.
Probably because it needs to be codes. It can't be, sorry, you're ready. It can't be that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, right. It has to meet certain rules. Because if Will Ferrell calls up personally the president, then I'm not going to launch based on that.
Yeah.
We're just thinking the president's announced.
Have you gone back to that day in your mind often, or is it the
every
sort
year?
Of thing that
every year? I think it's one of those moments like when JFK was shot. Everyone knows where they were on 9/11. So every year, I think a lot of Americans think about where they were on 9/11. I have an unusual story, but I think everyone has a unique story about where they were. So sure, every year I think about it. Yeah. And I tell the story a lot because it's unusual, and particularly in the Jewish community, military service it is more common than people think it is, but people don't know how common it is for Jews to serve the military. So they ask stories. That's one of my best ones is my 9/11 story.
Well, let's indulge into that idea of Jews serving in the military.
Yeah.
What's been your perspective over the years in service, and then in service as a chaplain, on how the military works with Jews and how Jews feel once they're in the military? I
think, first off, Jews serve at a higher percentage than non-Jews. So America is about 2% Jewish. The military is about 3% Jewish. By percentage, more Jews serve than non-Jews.
Which by numbers is a much bigger number than it sounds.
It's about
meaning 1% is more than...
Right, it's about 15,000 Jews in the military, we estimate. The problem is they're all terrified. And with no reason. The Air Force, I can't speak the Army or the Navy, but it's not that different. The Air Force bends over backwards for spiritual needs, right? We have the 4 pillars of comprehensive airman fitness. You should know these. There's the physical, the social, the mental, and the spiritual. and they really care about our spiritual needs. Jews tend to be terrified to ask for things. I know that comes from other governments who are obviously not so friendly to Jews, but they just don't want to stick out. When I worked at basic training as a chaplain in San Antonio, on the first Friday, they usually arrive on a Wednesday, and on Friday they all get marched into chapel and get their orientation briefing for the chapel. And then they break out by faith groups, so they can meet their chaplain, figure out when their services are, and the Jews were always first. So they had a room with 1,000 trainees. Hey, who's Jewish? Hell no. No. So I got it moved where the Jews were like in the middle somewhere. So once they see the Mormons getting up, and the Orthodox Christians getting up, and the Muslims, other groups, okay, it's okay getting up. My numbers doubled overnight. So Jews tend to be, and when I was serving as the senior Jewish chaplain in the Air Force for the last couple of years of my career, we were working on a plan to send Jewish chaplains out to bases in nowhere that needed a chaplain for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach. The problem is, big Air Forces, we say, can't mandate a base level do anything. The base has to ask for it. So the wing chaplain, the head chaplain of the base, is not going to ask for a thing if he or she doesn't know that they need it. So the Jews have to ask, hey, we got 9 Jews in this base. Can you send us a rabbi? Yes, they'll be more than happy to ask for it. And I was in charge of making sure we had rabbis available. But the bases weren't asking because the Jews don't ask. My last deployment was only a month. It was in Qatar for Tishrei. I was supposed to go to 3 different places, and they ended up canceling 2 of them because there were no Jews there. I'm like, yes, there are. If you send me there, and you advertise properly, they will show up. But they weren't asking, so the Air Force didn't know they had a need. So we work hard, all the Jewish chaplains, to encourage military Jews to ask for their needs. The Air Force would love to give them their needs. They think it's very, very important. This is a free country, and it should be. And so you are free to not be Jewish or be a non-practicing Jew. So how can the Air Force force you to do a Jewish thing against your will? They don't, they won't, and they shouldn't. But those Jews who do want something, if they don't ask for it, they're never going to get it.
Never going to get it. Yeah. Do you have any stories or experiences that stick out in your mind as being humorous or inspiring, for that matter?
I have a ton of stories. So as a lay leader at this one, I find inspiring. As a lay leader at Minot Air Force Base, it's not near a Jewish community, so Pesach food.
Minot being the nuclear one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Pesach food is really hard to get. So I used to go to the commissary on base, the on-base grocery store. It's a bad idea because they're not for profit, right? It's a government, and I usually go around Thanksgiving. That was my date to go and ask for Passover food, right? Because give them 6 months, whatever, out of 4 months. So I go, and they have a whole list. And I order all this Passover stuff. When I go back in February to ask, hey, is it here? When's it going out? Oh, the supplier went under in January. It's not coming. Why don't you tell me this? Could have done something. No Passover food. So the wing chaplain was a Christian. I don't remember his name. He was TDY. He was like on a work trip. I don't remember where, but somewhere in a Jewish community. And he took his own money and bought like $1,000 in Pesach, which actually is not much, but we're a small community. Pesach expensive. He bought all this food and FedExed it to us, which couldn't have been cheap. No. And I went and sold it to the community and then
paid him back.
Yeah. But he didn't have to do that. But it was important to him as a Christian chaplain to care for the 8 Jews on the base. And so that's how we have Passover food. The next year, I went to the in-town grocery store. They're a business. They're out for profit. This is capitalism. Capitalism is good. Most of the time. So I went to them and I said, hey, we have this small community. If you order stuff, we will buy it. And they said, okay, sure, no problem. So I can remember before Passover seeing a non-Jew with like a box of matzah there and everything. No, don't buy that now. Buy it after. I need it now. I didn't say it to them, but it's sold. So they were more than happy to buy it every year. But that's the kind of thing that even non-Jewish chaplains, they really do want to care for every faith. And so they'll go above and beyond if we ask for it.
You said you got a bump, so I'm going to let you just riff.
When I was in Iraq for Rosh Hashanah, I was there for a whole 4-month deployment, which is how long Air Force used to deploy for it. Rosh Hashanah was a Saturday, Sunday. So we're in the small little multi-faith room in the chapel, right? And we're having our Rosh Hashanah service. It's Sunday, second day. And the gospel service, hoot and holler and ask gospel, they're having a good time, they're enjoying themselves. I blow shofar, and they all hit the floor. They thought it was the incoming alarm. You could hear their guitars and their band and music. All of a sudden, it's silent, and that's all you hear. And I silence the gospel service. I always do the on-call chaplain duties on Christmas because, why shouldn't I? So I'm at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. And there's weather there. So I'd heard of DEF CONs and threat cons, whatever else. I'd never heard of road cons. But if the weather's poor and there's snow on the ground, they have these road cons, and it makes it unsafe to travel. The rule was if an hour before a service the road con was red or black, the service was canceled. Right. So I'm on-call chaplain on Christmas, and it's Christmas Eve, and it's snowing, and the service, we'll say 7 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, the road con is red. And the command post calls me up because they know our policy. And they said, okay, sir, what do you want us to do? I'm like, I guess we're canceling Christmas. So, okay. So they put a message saying that the 7 o'clock service is canceled. I immediately called my wing chaplain. Hey, sir, you should know. I just did this thing. Mm-hmm. I'm really sorry about that. But he said, nope, you're absolutely right. That's it's a safety issue.
It's a safe, yeah.
Right.
It's just the idea of it.
Rabbi canceled Christmas. Well, what was funny and not funny is the later service that our 4-star general wanted to go to. The weather didn't change. The roads didn't change, but the road con changed.
Oh.
And so all of a sudden we're back on for the midnight mass, which for him, who lives on base and has got a driver. Okay, but the people who have to work the service, who live an hour away in Hutzenplatz, Germany, they had to drive in because he wanted to go to mass. I appreciated him wanting to go to mass, but it's a safety issue. And,
yeah.
But he was. It wasn't my call. So, but I suspect that the base commander got a phone call saying change the road con.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, sir. What else are you going to do?
Well, why don't you tell us the story of when you got arrested?
Ah, jeez. Which time?
Oh, well, then there we go. Let's go. Let's hear them both.
So one was as a missileer. You can get your family tours of the launch capsules, right? So my first 9 months, I didn't have security clearance. I was waiting. There was like 15 of us waiting on a security clearance. So there was a big backlog at that time. So I couldn't be the escort. So a friend of mine escorted us. And there's a form that you have to fill out called the dispatch form. Everyone's name and social and things. And I was so raw and new and so inexperienced, I didn't know what I was doing. So there's more than one version of the form. They look identical, except for one says like a category 5. One says a 7. One says, so I got the 7 form for security personnel. Missileers were the 5. So I filled out the part 7, and my social had one extra number in it, which is also bad. So, however, the 3 agencies that actually reviewed the form, no one noticed it. Now, it's on me. I filled it out, but there's a reason other people review the form. No one caught it. So we get out to the launch capsule with me and my friend and my parents, and it's July, so it's it's not outside. We get inside the fence. You have to go to the cop and give him your ID, and he's like, "Stand by, sir." I'm like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "What's wrong?" He said, "There's an extra number in your social." I'm like, "Oh crap," because I know So what happened in the launch capsule was my roommate and his friend or his partner, and so people I know, and you could tell the cop knew that I was who I said he was. Like I'm in uniform, but he's got rules. So I'm standing there for half an hour while my friends are racking their brain, trying to find any way to not have me jacked up. That's what they call it. And like, nope, sorry. And they were so apologetic. I'm like, no, listen, this is your job. Yeah. Like I know that I'm safe because you're doing your job. So I got handcuffed. Thank God it was me. Thank God it was me and not my mom. That would have been way worse.
Yeah.
So I get handcuffed and escorted off the site, and I'm standing there. Thank God it wasn't January, because it was would have been very, very cold. And the cop asks me, "Hey sir, do you want to go prone?" Or I'm like, I thought about what prone meant. Lying flat. I'm like, no, if you're okay, I'll stay standing up. But like you have the gun and I don't. So I'll do whatever you tell me to do. But like I said, you could tell they knew that I was who I said I was. But the rules are rules. In about an hour, it was all over, and I was free to go. I got no trouble or anything, but it was just embarrassing. And so the second time is a much more interesting story. So I'm stationed at the Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs, and I'm a chaplain, obviously. And it's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is a Saturday this year, but it doesn't matter because so inside the area fence you can carry. There's a fence, it's fine, but the chapel is outside that fence, so you can't carry. And I was there every Shabbos. Right, so usually I had a Friday evening service, and I would sleep in my office because I can't go home. I lived in Denver, and I would go home Saturday night. So I had like a bed and things. So I would, because I was only in the chapel for like an hour on Friday evenings, I would leave all my IDs in my office. But Yom Kippur, I'm like, well, I'm going to be in the chapel all day. So I left my little proxy badge and my ID card in the chapel. Bad idea. So it happened. That was Saturday. On Tuesday, we had an active shooter exercise on the base, right? All the speakers went off. Everything worked. So after the service at the Col Michael and go back to my office to sleep, right? And at about 11 o'clock, I get up and go to the bathroom. We have like a little office hallway and a door, 2 bathrooms, and like a little ministry center where they can hang out, and there's like a pool table and there's a TV and things like that. So I open the bathroom door, and someone's holding the door closed, and I can see their sleeve and their uniforms, right? So it's Friday night. I think it's some cadets doing something, either having sex or doing drugs, whatever, things that they should be doing. So I start banging on the door. You guys have to get out of here. And they're like, well, who is this? I said, I'm a major in the Air Force. I'm a chaplain, like, out. I said, no, there's an active shooter. And I'm thinking that they're lying to me because we just had an exercise. That's right. the first excuse that popped in the head. So I said, no way. If there had been an active shooter real world, I would have heard it. all the phones went off. My phone was off. It was Yom Kippur.
Right.
So they asked for my ID card. I'm like, first of all, I don't have it on me. Secondly, no way. I'll never see it again.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth for like 45 minutes. I think I rushed in the door, but they're 18 and 20, and I'm at the time 42, 43. They're overpowering me. So after a while, so and they say we're calling the cops. I'm like, go ahead, because either they're either you won't call them because you know you're lying, or you will call them and they'll come here and get you in trouble. So after about an hour or so, I said, listen, it's obvious you're lying to me because there's no police here. You didn't call the police. I said, but I'm a chaplain. My job is not to get you in trouble. I don't have my phone on me. I can't make a phone call. I can't take your picture. I can't write your names down. I can't do anything. I can't leave you here. So I'm going to go to my office and get a book to read. If I come back in a minute or two and you're gone, no harm, no foul. Fine, whatever. So I'm thinking they're all going to scoot. So I go to my office, walk around the hall for a minute, get a book to read, and like a pillow to sit on. And I come back and they're still there. All right, have it your way. I sit down to read. And at the time, I'm reading a biography of Albert Einstein as a physicist, right? And they said after the fact they could see like my feet. I'm in like suit pants and flip flops and a t-shirt, right? I just put on pants to go to the bathroom, and they said they could see my feet and like my hands as I shifted my weight and the book. They can see the book I'm reading. What kind of active shooter brings a book of Albert Einstein to reading? Like, what's going on? So I sit there and
so why did they let you go to your office and come back?
So there was a real active shooter threat. So
no, we're going to save that. But why did they let you go to your office if they were trying to?
Well, they were stuck in the bathroom, so they had no control over me. I just walked around where I was. These are cadets, these are college students.
Right. They weren't. When you say overpowered, you mean overpowered verbally?
Well,
I thought you meant you got into a tussle.
No, just a verbal.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
That makes more sense. Okay,
yeah. So after like another
maybe elaborate on that, and then I'll edit it because this whole time I thought you had a bit.
No. So I tried opening the door, and I couldn't because there was like 6 or 7 of them, and I thought I was trying to overpower them, but they're like 20 years old and I'm 42, and that's not going to work out for me. And there was I figured there was about 3 of them. It was 7. So no, like in a 1 urinal, 1 stall bathroom. It was 7 of them. So after another hour or so, I'm sitting there reading. Down the other side of our ministry center, there's an exterior door, and I see some guys with like flashlights flashing on off the door. I think it's their buddies come looking for them. I go down there, unlock the door. It's like 7 cops with M4s, and it's like all the police, and they're like, pointed at me, and I tell my kids. And even if the cops are wrong and you're right, which is not the case here, nobody was wrong, right? We're all given the nation we all have, we're all doing the right thing. I said it, but in a free society, you do not get to resist the police, right? They're doing their job. If I'm gonna get shot if I resist anyway. So I am. Hey, I am hands up. Who are you? I said I'm the Jewish chaplain. I sleep here on Friday nights. There's some kids in the bathroom. I don't know what's going on. I end up handcuffed on my knees. I have a photo of it.
You're looking down the barrel of a gun.
Yes.
You have how many faced at you?
5 or 6.
5 or 6 barrels faced at you with bullets at the other end.
Pretty much.
Ready to go if you made the wrong move.
Yes.
What was that feeling like? Because not many people get that experience.
My only thought was comply. Whatever they say, I'm doing it. Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun. Whatever they say, I'm doing it.
Did you have any existential woof that went through you, or it was just operation mode, comply?
No, I think because I knew I knew I wasn't a threat. I wasn't armed, so I figured if I comply, I won't get shot. Only thing I had on me was my keys, right? So I end up handcuffed on my knees, and all but one of them go down to the bathroom. And once again, you can tell that he believes me because he's like smoozing, like I'm a chaplain. I'm talking like, hey, what's going on? And there was a point where my knees were getting sore, and I said, "Do you mind if I stand up?" He said, "No." And he's like, "Okay, fine, good." So at that moment, I think back about 2 weeks earlier, 2 Fridays earlier, I'm walking to the chapel, and this civilian Air Force cop is walking around doing security checks. I start talking to him. I'm a chaplain. I start talking to the guy, seeing how he's doing. He's not Jewish. I invited him in for dinner. Come on, join us for dinner. But I'll always feed a cop. The next week, He brought his buddy, another Air Force cop, staff sergeant. I fed both of them, not Jewish. As I'm handcuffed on my knees, that guy walks up. And he says, I know that guy. He's cool. He's the rabbi. I'm immediately free to go. I am immediately a trusted agent. I'm unhandcuffed. They don't I am who I say I am. They now believe me. So be nice to the police, because you never know when you're going to need one. So they get this.
To all those that were scared about putting their hand up for being Jewish, all it needs is a Friday night deal and dinner.
Just feed the cops. Yeah. So they get the 7 cadets out of the bathroom. There were 7 of them. They were the cadet honor guard having like a social event in our ministry center. So, but we're still under threat. So now the 8 of us have to hole up in the kitchen. It's a little awkward. Like, hey guys, how you doing? Like, what's going on? I'm talking to them, and they apologize. Listen, apologize. You're doing the right thing. So they ended up releasing the all call at about 2 o'clock in the morning. I still haven't used the bathroom. I thought it was all started. I didn't know the bathroom. I totally forgot about having another bathroom. But I'm fasting. I've been yelling a lot. I'm all hoarse. I get up at whatever, I don't know, 7 o'clock to go leave the service. I'm like, I'm not going to say a word. But to anybody, what happened to me? I'm not going to say a word. I get to the chapel, and all my cadets are like, Rabbi, what happened to you last night? Was there a thing? I'm like, maybe. So it was all over the cadet chat. All right, there's a guy here says he's the rabbi. What should we do? Get him. So fortunately, my boss came in, the one who was here last night. My boss came in on Saturday. So I wanted him to hear from me before doing anybody else. I said, hey, sir, I got a story to tell you. Here's what happened. And I was trying to keep my sleeping in my office on the down low. Like, we got approval. But it's weird, and there were some chaplains who were sleeping in the dorms doing inappropriate things. So I wanted to be not so public. That went out the window. Out the window. So all's well that ends well. So it's funny. After Yom Kippur, we're having a break fast, and my wife calls me, right? And she says, I had the worst Yom Kippur. I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry, I promise mine was worse. So how this all got started, the Air Force Academy is a 4-year undergraduate college, right? Down the hill, we say, there's a prep school, a community college, right? Often for athletes, or those who maybe need to work on their grades, right? So they were having a Nerf gun fight. I'm not kidding you. It's called Nerfgate. The whole thing's called Nerfgate now. And a guy's on the phone with his mom. Hey, Mom, they're shooting at me. We got to go. Click. Bye. Mom called the cops. That's how this all started. There was never actually an active shooter.
That is ridiculous.
There was, So it became like part of the institution. I can remember. So this is, October. The next June or July at basic training, a freshman cadet who was in high school when this happened came and said, "Is it true that you?" I'm like, "Yes, it's true." Like, she heard about it. It became this like running story. Every time we had a guest, I had to tell the story. Every time a new member of the staff came in, I had to tell the story. It became like this whole running thing. The following year, one of our chaplains, a friend of mine, made this sign. I don't know the exact text, but he said, this is Chaplain Bram. He's not a terrorist. He's here for his religion. Don't shoot, handcuff, beat, attack, or tase this bro. That's on my door. It became this whole running joke, yeah. But these things only happen to me. No other faith group chaplain would have this problem on Saturday, right? Because they would have their phone on and saw the actual threat come through on their phones, whereas my phone was off. But the speakers didn't work. They worked on Tuesday, they didn't work on Saturday and Friday.
Oh, that's true. We've definitely had some extremities in this conversation from 9/11 to a Nerf gun active shooter, shooter arrest on Yom Kippur. Are there any other points or situations that you went through in the military that you'd like to talk about or elaborate on or just share because they're fun?
I had a lot of fun going through station. So the story of Moshe's Bris is a fun story. So my son, so I have 4 daughters, and I have a son who is the youngest. He was born in Alaska. We generally don't find out genders before they're born, but we knew we were expecting and knew we were in Alaska. So we had to find a gender because we had to fit a Moyle in advance because there isn't one in Alaska. There's no one in Alaska. Found out he was a boy. And I'm in Wisconsin for Thanksgiving, seeing to my parents. So I go up to Wachorski, Benzine Wachorski, and Wachorski in Milwaukee, and I say, hey, I might be in need of a Moyle in a few months. Can you recommend somebody? It's like, why ask me? Go ask a Tom Moyle. Great, thank you. So I go over to him, and I say, hey, I have good news for you. And I have bad news for you. You've won a free trip to Alaska. It's in February. It's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, you know, sun and things. He said, okay, if he's available. His first obligation, obviously, is in his community. But I grew up there, so you know, part of the community, sort of. He said if he's available, he will come. So Rabbi Twersky asked me, who's going to be the Sandak? One who holds the baby. I have no idea. It's like, my dad, I don't know. He's like, no, I'll come. You just pay the airfare. And it was not a request. It was an order. I haven't given orders before. This was not like, hey, if you want, I'll come. I will come. So I deploy in January, and Moshe is born in February. So I'm in Qatar. It's the birth via Skype. Actually, I just missed it. But for an Air Force career, I've been in the room 4 to 5 times, so that's not bad. And actually, it makes me a better chaplain. I can relate to those who have missed their birth. So I know, you know.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that.
Exactly how it feels
after this story.
Yeah. So Moshe's born. He's healthy, great. I make what I think is the only Sholom Zochor in the history of Qatar, or at least in the last 1,000 years. It was very small, but God bless kosher troops. Sent me all the stuff I needed. Thank you, Mrs. First. Sent me all the stuff I needed. Then I email Rabbi Ganellis, the Moyle, and Rabbi Twersky. Rabbi Ganellis is available. Great, he'll come. Rabbi Twersky is in San Diego speaking, so he's not available. So my Rav, who I got smicha from at the time, was the Gateshead Rav. So I email him. Hey, Rabbi Zimmerman, I'm coming to Gate to Alaska. He's in Israel making matzah for all of Gateshead, so he's not available. So we go back and forth about who else we want to have up, have come. So Rabbi Bechhofer in Muncie was one of my Rabbi's Shiva, and he has a very practical view of the world. He's very educated and very religious, very knowledgeable, like all the things that we want Moshe to be. So at this point, I'm making phone calls because I'm out of time. And but making a phone call from a military base in Qatar to America is not easy to do because it's all DSN lines. And so I call him up. Rebecca, you want to come to Alaska for Bris? He's like, he ended up asking the dean of my yeshiva, go, it'll make him happy, he said. Great. So I have a friend who's a reform rabbi, and she's very social media savvy. She says, you should crowdfund this money for all this, And I probably broke some rules, because I played the whole military thing. Hey, I'm an Air Force chaplain in Qatar, stationed in Alaska, money for a Sandak. In like 2 days, I made a profit. I had to turn it off. But there were some people, put it on Facebook and everything else, some strangers, Jewish strangers, who were very opposed to circumcision. You're sure it's perfect the way he is, don't do this, it's awful.
Oh, you got the hate mail.
Yeah, so what's funny, my friend who emceed last night, he said he'll give an extra $50 for every anti-circumcision jerk out there. And they kept going. He gave $400.
Really?
Because they just kept going. So we flew everybody up. I was at the Bris via Skype. Right? So now we have a Shaila. There's a bracha the father makes at the Bris. I'm there real time, but I'm also 6,000 miles away. Can I make this bracha? I asked my Rav, who's in Israel. I have it written down somewhere, but he asked for like major poskim in Israel. Major poskim. 4 is not a good number. They split 2 to 2. So now what do? He said, do whatever you want. Okay? So I give all this information to the Chabad Shliach and Anchor because it was his shul. I said, here's what I have. I'll do whatever you say that I should do. So he says, say it. Okay. So they do the Mila, and I make the bracha. I gave the name over Skype. I washed, had a little suda. I didn't answer the Zimun. I thought that was a little bit too much. But Rebecca first spoke, and I learned that the gematria of Dam Bris equals Anchorage.
Really?
I don't know how we got there. I don't recall, but some connection. The next day, God bless my wife. She knows how to talk to a military person. She calls me up the next day and says, Moshe's fine. That's not how. Why would I think he's not fine? But when there's a family, sometimes the fact that you can talk to your family every day when deployed isn't always a good thing, right? Back in World War II, you got a letter a week if you were lucky. That letter wasn't the car broke down, the toilet's clogged. It was much bigger important things. When you talk every day, I can't fix the car from downrange. I can't fix the toilet. So I don't want to know these things. I want to be there for you. But so she calls me after the story's over. Moshe's fine. Here's the end of the story first. Thank you. Apparently Moshe's a bleeder. So the Moyle went to go change the bandage next day, and there's blood everywhere. There's everywhere. And Sarah freaks out.
As you would.
As any mother would. He's like, I have to go home today. Like, I'm leaving. So they got it bandaged. Sarah had a friend who was local, who was a nurse, and she was really helpful. So he's fine. He's 9. He's totally fine. He's a bleeder. Okay, fine. But if she called me, Moshe's bleeding profusely, I would have freaked out.
Of course.
I'm so far away, right? Actually had a friend who's like, who was my a roommate. I think his daughter like almost drowned, and his wife called saying she's not breathing. I have to go, and he's losing his mind, right? And I'm sure her intentions were good, and the kid is fine, thank God. But he's freaking out. It doesn't help us to know the bad things that we can't do anything about. So thank God Sarah, like I said, she led with Moshe's fine. Now I'm going to tell you a story. Great. So I hear the story. I know that my son is okay. I met him at 5 months old. I come home, he's 5 months old. I met him.
Can we talk a little bit about what that experience is like? The emotional toll on you and the toll that you've, to an extent, feel for your family, having that experience of meeting your child at 5 months old. I'm sure missing birthdays, missing milestones, missing...
It's rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Listen to the I have one son. And listen, I never asked God for a gender. But, Bris is unique. And I missed all of it. Someone told me that month, you have to miss the birth or the conception. Miss the birth. That's what someone told me. So, okay, I was there for the conception. Which is absolutely true. You have to put it in perspective, right? Absolutely true, because I've seen a lot of the other.
Right.
A lot of marriages break up. I think that I'm joking only halfway. Dumping your spouse while he or she gets deployed should be like a capital crime. It's treason. Because they're fighting a war and they can't do their jobs. They can't protect the nation because their home life is falling apart. I'm not saying every marriage has to stay together, but staying married while he or she is gone isn't going to hurt you any. You're going to dump them because this isn't working. Okay, it sucks, but just wait till they get home. But that's my little soapbox. But missing these things. My kids' birthdays are all between January and March. So I was gone January through July. I missed them all. We FaceTimed often. Not every day. I'm of the school of thought that and not agrees with me, and that's fine. That quality is better than quantity. That fewer phone calls. If you talk every day, 3 times a day, it makes the homesickness worse. At least for me. Look at 4 calls a week, 2 with Sarah and the kids, and 2 just me and Sarah, almost like a date night, just to have that connection. Now it feels that way, and there's no one way to do it. So I'm not saying mine is the only good way to do it, but being gone is hard. I think it's maybe harder for the family. Like I said, my first week I bought a PlayStation, and then she had a kid, so like. I'm playing video games all day. And also depends on where you are. When I was in Iraq, there was no Wi-Fi then. This is 2009. And so you would make these like 10-minute morale calls. So I would call, we were stationed in Germany. I was in Iraq, but Sarah went home to her family in Savannah, where she's from. So I would call the base in Savannah via DSN and then give them Sarah's cell phone number. And I would get a 10-minute morale call. That's it. So to talk to everyone in 10 minutes, all right? And I can remember once being on the phone and the mortar started falling. And she's like, what's that noise? I'm like, construction? I'm like, they're making a building next door. Don't tell her what's really going on. And then I also recall having a fight, like 5 morale calls in a row. Right? So I don't know what we're fighting about, it doesn't matter. We'd be arguing, the call would end, I'd call right back, I'd pick up that argument again. Probably something stupid that we shouldn't argue about in the first place.
Well, I mean,
we're good.
It's a true, yeah, I know. I saw you with your 5 kids yesterday, so that's why I took it.
Every couple argues now and then.
Yeah. I did 9 months long distance because my wife was in America and I was in Australia during COVID. And I had a rule which I tell her now called the hour 20 rule, which was when we started an argument, I knew, all right, this is going to take about an hour 20, and we're going to get this sorted, because if you hang up, you don't know what would happen. Right. You really, it really is that fear of maybe you never will pick up the phone again. What was that experience like for you throughout that time? Because I'm sure it wasn't easy.
I don't think that our marriage was ever in jeopardy. I never wanted to divorce her. I wanted to kill her more than once. I'm sure me more than that. I am not easy to live with. So our marriage had ups and downs, but we're old school, so we're committed to working on it. I think nowadays marriage is seen as disposable and not even work. Marriage takes work. It's not always easy. It's not always fun, but it's always good, right? I actually think today people equate good with enjoyable, right? Childbirth, I've never gone through it, but I've seen it, is not an enjoyable experience. Is it good? Absolutely. So marriage isn't always fun, but it's always worth it. So I don't think that we ever, that our marriage is ever in any jeopardy, but we've had ups and downs, and times we feel more connected, less connected, and but it'll be 20 years in September, God willing, and we're still here.
So I mean to ask more the emotions that you were going through during that time.
It's hard. I mean, I don't know what word I put on it, but everyone's homesick. And I think you're more homesick when there's things going on. Like just every parent wants to hold their kid, and I got to see him via Skype. And now I did miss a lot of diapers, so that's good. And actually, I'm the fun dad. So for the first 6 months, they're not so interactive. And I'm loud and I have booming voice, so I have to scare them. Not on purpose, but I'm just loud.
So it was more a safety precaution that you were
almost like I was actually there for parts that I don't like, so to speak. Like for the first 6 months, I can't play with them. They're not. They're just there. So I missed that part. Okay.
How's that been, being able to relate to other people who are deployed, having those experiences, and how important do you think it is that chaplains are married and have kids, if they can, to be able to relate to those sort of, to be able to relate to the full spectrum?
I think it's empathy versus sympathy. If you haven't, before I had the experience of missing my son's birth, I could sympathize, right? I could feel bad for you. I can't feel bad with you. Now that I've had experience, I know what, I can sit there and I can cry with you, and I can be frustrated with you, and I can be angry with you that I'm here. I know exactly how that feels. I think there are a lot of fine chaplains that aren't married. All my Catholic priests I work with, a lot of them are great priests. Actually, I had a priest who worked for me. He felt he was a better priest because he wasn't married. He felt I had no distractions, no kids wanting my time. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. This is your theology. But first off, kids are great Kiruv. Kids are great Kiruv, because when you're at the Air Force Academy or basic training, they're starving for their families, and they love kids. So they'll come to anything if my kids are there. But it also shows them that I have good Orthodox kids that are relatable and real. I don't know how the priests do it without the support of their families. Now, I've seen they have the support of their Catholic communities. So great, they have support, but I couldn't do it. But I did it for 20 plus years without the support.
It's impressive in some ways. What they do.
Yeah. But I need that. So.
Let's touch a bit upon experiences when you first landed in Iraq or Afghanistan, in those war zones where mortars were going off literally right next to you, or potentially within the base itself.
It's interesting. Iraq and Afghanistan both felt very different. Iraq was a grid pattern. It was an Iraqi base that we just conquered, right? So they were already building. There was already roads, already runway. The thing I noticed most was the voltage. The voltage in Iraq was European voltage, right? Because
That's higher,
right? It's Middle East. Afghanistan, it was like a big bowl of spaghetti, right? Because we built the base during the war. So let's put a building here, a road here. And the voltage, it was American voltage, because we gave them electricity. They didn't have it before. Iraq felt like a base that was being shot at. Afghanistan felt like the worst inner city in America, just like squared, because it was much more chaotic. Mortars fell every day in Iraq. You get used to it. At the end, you're not really jumping into shelters anymore. There's these bunkers everywhere, and you're supposed to hear the alarm and jump into a little bunker, and you do for the first few weeks, and then you just kind of like stop. At least a lot of us did. Is that right? Probably not. It's dangerous, probably. But when I was there, no one died from enemy fire when I was there. So what's happening is they have the Iron Dome type thing, right? Little R2 units shooting the things coming in, and there's constantly drones circling. So if you can see the fence, you'll see like a white van pull up, a bunch of terrorists come out with the mortar, and you'll see them. Oh, they're about to shoot at me, and poof, they're gone, because the drones are circling, and bam. So they either have to aim very quickly and so their aim is poor, and aim and shoot very, very fast. Their aim is poor, or they get blown up. So things got hit while I was there, but nothing that hurt anybody. I remember the parking lot of the dining facility got hit, but didn't explode. And then I was the chaplain for the firefighters, and an empty building got hit. I'm destroyed. They were so excited. They got to fight a fire with no lives in danger, right? So it was great. I can remember sitting in my room watching a movie one night, and I hear this thunk. I'm like, that's a weird noise. I've never heard that before. So I'm like, I didn't hear an alarm. I'm gonna stay in my room until someone, So I was also the bomb squad, the EOD chaplain. I was their chaplain. So next day I'm like, hey, did a mortar hit in housing? Like, yeah, it did. Did it go off? No. Okay, great. So no one died from enemy fire while I was in Iraq. In Afghanistan, I was there. So in Afghanistan, there is what they call a fighting season, basically summer. So I was there for Pesach, just 18 days in and out. And I was there right at the end of the non-fighting season. I left the morning of Motzi Pesach, and the fighting season started an hour later. Like my base was hit from like 3 sides as I'm on the plane headed out to Kyrgyzstan.
Can you explain that fighting season? Like what's the reasons behind that?
Weather. Mountain passes are blocked by snow, right? And Iraq is a desert. Afghanistan is a mountain, so they're much higher up, and weather's nicer if you ask me. But travel and maneuver is so much harder in the winter that they really don't do a whole lot of fighting in the winters. So once the snow thaws and the passes are now passable, fight's on. So fighting season runs generally, from the spring until early fall. Interesting.
Well, I could sit here for another 2 hours with you, but I know that time is a constraint. So before we go, is there any ideas that you want to give off, or messages you want to say?
The biggest thing I want to say is that Jews do in fact serve in the military, and they're not always stationed in New Jersey or in New York. They're stationed everywhere, and they need support. There are some great organizations like Kosher Troops, the Aleph Institute. There's a bunch of others that support Jews around the world in the military. We need that. We also need good chaplains. Like I said, the Air Force, where I come from, is right now down to 7 active duty chaplains, and in a year we'll be down to 5. And we need good chaplains to be caring for Jewish personnel. So if anybody knows anybody who's got smicha and a master's degree, wants to be a chaplain, it's an awesome life. It's a sacrifice, but it's absolutely worth it. My kids are not behind. We homeschooled for a bunch of years. My 9th grader is basically the top student in the school. We have talked about her skipping a grade because she's like bored in all her classes. She's doing college classes soon because she wants to be more advanced. But they have a very outside the from box way of thought. They're hardworking. They've seen the world. They're not so sheltered in a good way. They have no tolerance for a mishigas. I think that their childhood may not have been always easy, but I think it'll make them good adults. So it's a good way of life. And so those are my 2 big things. We need good chaplains, and we need support because we're everywhere, and we do serve.
Well, thank you very, very much. Now,
my pleasure.
Called Mike.
That's right, just Mike.